This lesson focuses in on how to punctuate dialogue. Our goal for our task is to really bring a character to life. So it's going to be important for us to make sure that we watch our conventions as we use dialogue throughout our task. There are some rules for using quotation marks. We know that we use quotation marks to enclose a direct quotation, otherwise a person's exact words. Here's some examples. Our team leader says, "I try to practice every day." The team leader is the one who's talking, so we gave them a tag. We let our audience know who is speaking. We put quotation marks around what we wanted that leader to say. And since our dialogue came at the end, we used a punctuation mark within the quotations. In this case, it makes sense to use a period. Let's look at this example. "Let's go home," Jean suggested. Again, Jean is tagged. She's the one who's talking. We put quotation marks around what Jean says. But she's talking and then we tagged her. So here the punctuation mark is not a period. It's a comma. When the tag comes after the dialogue, instead of a period, it's a comma. Now let's look at some conventions that we also need to pay attention to. A directly quoted sentence begins with a capital letter. And I know, my friends, this is something that we've been working on, when to use capitals. So here I have Mrs. Talbot. Because she's the one that's talking, I tagged her. I used a comma before what she said, and then I made sure, because she's saying, "Please get a pencil," I capitalized the P. I tagged her first, so at the end of my quotation, I use a period. Once again, of course, we see those quotation marks around what Mrs. Talbot is saying. Here's another example. Christina asked, "Is it my turn?" I tagged Christina first, so I need a punctuation mark at the end of my dialogue. I capitalized what Christina asked because she's beginning to talk, and then I used quotation marks to show that that's what she's saying exactly. Sometimes we split the dialogue and we put the tag in the middle of the conversation. So when an expression identifying the speaker interrupts a quoted sentence, the second part of the quotation begins with a lowercase letter. We're putting those two together. So for example, I know that in this sentence, Mr. Franklin is the one who's talking. What he says is, "Will you take care of my lawn and pets while I'm on vacation next month?" This writer decided to tag Mr. Franklin in the middle. So because they did that, we have quotations around the beginning and the end. We have a comma to interrupt the tag. I have quotations again around what he says after the tag, a punctuation mark at the end of his sentence, but you'll notice this W is not capitalized because it's still part of the original sentence. Here's another example of a split dialogue. If a quoted sentence is divided, a comma usually follows the first part and comes before the second part. So Donna is tagged here, and she's saying, "Oh, he's probably just saying that because he's never had a cat." The author decided to put O here, and then a comma, because it goes along with this part of the sentence. You'll noticing H is not capitalized because it goes along with the first part. And because we're at the end here, we have to have a period or a punctuation mark within the quotations to finish what Donna's saying. If we have a quote at the beginning, a quotation mark comes at the beginning of a sentence, a comma, question mark, or exclamation point usually follows it. So here the author decided to tag whoever was talking at the end. And Jared says, "Dogs make better pets than cats do," said Jared. I put quotation marks around what Jared said. And I use a comma here because I'm tagging Jared at the end. And my period comes at the end here. Here's another example. Have you ever had a cat? Emily asked. I'm tagging Emily at the end. I put quotation marks around what Emily said. Emily's asking a question, so putting a comma here wouldn't make any sense. Instead, I go ahead and I use a question mark. But at the end of my telling sentence, I put a period. And then we have the last one. No, and I never will, he replied. Again, I've got quotation marks here. He's obviously talking with feeling about his dislike for cats. So they have an exclamation point. But I use a period to show that I'm finished with my idea and my sentence at the end here. Sometimes a quotation comes at the end of a sentence. When that happens, a comma usually comes before it. So, in this example, I'm tagging Tara in the beginning, and I put a comma. I put quotation marks around what Tara is saying, and then I go ahead and I use a punctuation mark at the end of her sentence. A period or a comma should always be placed inside the quotation marks. This is one of those stickler rules that people have. For example, here's the quotation mark. I'm going to have my comma here within the quotation. It helps my reader know that this is the place to pause while James is talking, so I could read it a little bit better. I can't wait to see Shirley Caesar's new video, James said. It's supposed to come out next week. Now in this example, you'll notice that this I is capitalized. Why do you think we capitalized the I in this one, but we didn't capitalize it before? Did you notice that while I was reading, I was able to see James's complete thought here? I'm going to read it again. I can't wait to see Shirley Caesar's new video. That's a complete sentence. So now it makes sense. They capitalize this I because it starts a new sentence. It's supposed to come out next week. That makes complete sense by itself. It's not a fragment. So when I have two complete sentences, I should capitalize the second one. And notice that we used a period here. So that let me know that he was absolutely starting a new thought. Finally, there are some exceptions to the rules, because what would rules be if there weren't some times you're supposed to break them? A question mark or an exclamation point should be placed inside closing quotation marks when the quotation itself is a question or an exclamation. But otherwise, it should be placed outside. Here's an example. What time will you be home from work, Mom? Asked Michael. Well, Michael's asking this question, so it makes sense that the question mark is inside his quotations. This one, who said, all the world's a stage? They're asking a question and using a quotation, so the question mark goes outside the quotation. Stop! Yelled a crossing patrol. We can see that they're yelling, and we want to put that inside their quotation. But this one, what a surprise to hear Susanna say, we're moving back to Puerto Rico in June. The author was surprised to hear what Susanna said, but Susanna may have said it like this. We're moving back to Puerto Rico in June. So the exclamation point goes outside the quotations. We're not sure exactly how Susanna said it, but we know that this author was surprised. Don't be afraid to use dialogue in your writing. We know that we're really trying to bring our narrators to life, so we want to make sure we use it thoughtfully. We want to sprinkle dialogue in, because we want every word a character says to count. This is big. Don't overuse dialogue. Sometimes we read stories and it feels like all the characters are doing are talk, and it's hard to see really what goes on. So it should supplement your descriptions, not take over. So as you start now, what your next job is going to be, my friends, is you need to find a picture in a center. When you find that picture in a center, your job is going to be to either alone or with a partner create a dialogue and include some descriptions that will help us understand that picture a little bit better. We hope you find some pictures that are interesting. Make sure that you put your name on it, your partner's name on it, and turn it into your teacher as part of your center work.